Hello everyone, my name is Rahim and I am a clinical research fellow in urogynecology at St Mary's Hospital in London. I'm here to present our data on a 5-year follow-up study of subsequent deliveries following OASIS. Neither I nor any of my co-authors have any conflict of interest to declare. So in regards to subsequent deliveries after OASIS, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists recommend that all women who have sustained a previous OASIS should be counselled about the mode of delivery in their subsequent pregnancy. However, the guidelines don't specify by whom and what form that counselling should take place. As a response, specialised perineal or pelvic floor clinics have been set up all around the UK. However, it's unknown whether these provide any significant benefit over standard antenatal counselling alone. Our objective was therefore to review the subsequent mode of deliveries in women who have sustained an OASIS in a previous pregnancy and assess the role of a specialised pelvic floor clinic in the decision-making process. So this was a retrospective observational study across 2 maternity sites with a combined delivery rate of 8,500 deliveries a year. We included data where the index delivery occurred at any point between January 2014 and December 2018, and the subsequent delivery occurred at any point up until December 2020. We separated the data into 3 groups. Groups 1 were women who were labelled as standard antenatal counselling, and these were women who had a midwife or a doctor review them antenatally, have a discussion in regards to mode of delivery and a plan set in their medical notes as to what they would prefer. Groups 2 and 3 were women who attended our specialised pelvic floor clinic where they underwent a review of symptoms, anal manometry, as well as an endoanal ultrasound scan. We defined the symptomatic group of women, which is group 3, as women who had persistent fecal urgency or incontinence with or without an incremental squeeze pressure of less than 20 millimeters of mercury and or endoanal ultrasound scans showing more than 30 degrees of an arc defect on either of the 2 sphincters. The counselling in the pelvic floor clinic, including a recommendation which was made by the clinician based on the findings, but ultimately we leave the choice to the patient. So we identified 642 women who suffered from OASIS between our study period, of which we know of 236 women who had subsequent pregnancies afterwards. We had to exclude 19 of these women because of incomplete notes or some of them being pregnant at the time of the analysis. 217 pregnancies were therefore included, and we split them into the 3 groups. As a reminder of our objective, we were going to compare the mode of deliveries between the women who had received standard antenatal counselling, which is group 1, with those that had received review in the pelvic floor clinic, which is groups 2 and 3. The groups were relatively well matched in regards to the median maternal age as well as the median booking BMI. They were also well matched in terms of the mode of index delivery. The classification of OASIS was also no different in either of the groups, and the mean fetal birth weight was also roughly the same. In regards to our overall results, this graph shows the breakdown in proportions of women that subsequently had a spontaneous vaginal delivery versus an elective caesarean. You can see at a glance that the asymptomatic women who attended the pelvic floor clinic tended to have a higher vaginal delivery rate than women who had had standard antenatal counselling. The light green represents the assisted vaginal or instrumental deliveries, and the light yellow represents the ones who've had emergency caesarean sections in labour. So to look at these results in more detail, we found that 62% of women achieved a vaginal delivery post-OASIS overall. We found that 31% of them opted to have an elective caesarean, while 15 women, which was 7%, had an emergency caesarean section, and the most common reason for this was suspected fetal distress or failure to progress in the first stage of labour. We found that women who attended the pelvic floor clinic and were found to be asymptomatic had a lower rates of caesarean compared to women who had attended for just standard antenatal counselling. We did find that symptomatic women had an increased chance of a caesarean section, but this did not meet significance. We also noted that actually 45% of the women that we deemed as symptomatic still chose and achieved a vaginal delivery. As mentioned earlier, we only make a recommendation during the pelvic floor clinic, and the emphasis is always placed on patient choice. In regards to recurrence of OASI, we found that of the 135 women who had a vaginal delivery, 6 had a recurrence of an OASI. This equated to about 4.4%. From the table, we can see that actually between the groups there was no difference in the recurrence rates. So women who were seen in pelvic floor clinic were not significantly less likely or more likely to have a recurrence. As a tangent, about 4 out of the 6 women reviewed postnatally in the pelvic floor clinic. 3 of them were asymptomatic, but 1 woman had fecal urgency with a new defect on endoanal ultrasound scan. So in conclusion, we can say that many women who sustain an OASI continue to opt for a vaginal birth in subsequent pregnancies. We found that a dedicated pelvic floor or perineal clinic can reduce the number of elective caesarean deliveries in asymptomatic women compared with just standard antenatal counselling. However, the role of the pelvic floor clinic in predicting or preventing a recurrence of OASIs remains unclear. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I'd happily take any questions you may have.